Welcome back into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast, coming at you on Thursday. The last major of the year has kicked off, and
already.
Yes, I know.
With them moving the PGA Championship up,
Yep.
it used to kind of conflict with the NFL schedule, and PGA decided let's move it up and basically just own. It's been one major per month, starting with the Masters in April, and then one in May, one June, and now finishing up in July. So but it just makes it feel like a super quick golf season,
Yeah, and we're under a month and a half now from the Tour Championship. So the golf season essentially is going to be wrapping up shortly too, at least for this year. Next year, they're going to go to a calendar year schedule like they had in the past again, but
yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I guess
quick.
that's good news.
That's one of the new Jay Monahan things that he's trying to compete with Liv, so he's trying to get yeah, whatever. But all right, question of the day, Gel. I know your golf game is honed in on playing out of the sand quite a bit, so I want to know, what would you shoot at St. Andrews?
I may end up just having to putt my way around the course so that to avoid those bunkers, because at St. Andrews, they are legendarily impossible to hit out of. If I'm playing my regular game, oh God, do we start the over under at 165? I mean, if I get in one of those bunkers, it may take me 10 shots to get out. The way some of those bunkers are 6 feet tall.
Yeah, those pop bunkers they have. I guess, I'm kind of going on the fly here. Do you think you'd shoot a better score at Augusta National or at St. Andrews? St. Andrews is wide open, not a lot of trees, but obviously Augusta's a lot
St.
tighter.
Andrews, honestly, just because it is that link style course, which we play every year. So at least I'm familiar with that and how open it is. The only thing is just that if I get in those bunkers, I'm going to end up. But if I'm able to avoid the bunkers, I mean, I'm not shooting anything pretty, but it's going to be better than Augusta, where I'm pretty sure about 80%. Well, shoot, 75% of my drives now end up missing the fairway. So at Augusta, that might be closer to 90+% where I'm fighting trees every shot. So probably St. Andrews, just because I think I could make my way around the course, and it would just be the bunkers that would be the absolute killer.
Or you could also have some of the elements that would come into play with the wind and rain that you wouldn't necessarily have at Augusta either. So it could
it's not going to be pretty either way.
No, either way, it would not be pretty.
Probably I say St. Andrews, and just I don't tee it up. I don't hit my tees super high anyway. So hopefully, or far for that matter. So hopefully there would be less of a wind impact. Rain, I play in rain every year at Michigan anyways, at least once or twice.
Yeah.
Up there. So on that link style course, on that national course. So the elements don't really matter that much to me anyways. I played in everything from concrete fairways down here in Texas to
I can attest, they are hard.
They can be extremely rock hard, all the way to rain soaked, where I am holy hell, I bombed that drive. But then it comes down and literally sits under, almost under the ground in the fairway. I'm looking for my ball, and it's 30 yards back because it didn't roll at all. So, yeah, I'm gonna give it to St. Andrews, though, is probably where I would score a little bit better, as long as I can very intentionally miss these bunkers.
Yeah, same here.
If I know my distances, if I can know my distances and just hit short of the bunkers every time, then I'll be okay.
Yep. Yeah, this is one that you'll watch this weekend at some point in time. They'll show a highlight of somebody that has to end up either hitting it backwards out of one of the traps or else hitting it sideways out. So they're intense. So
some of these are literally 6-8 feet high, if not. There's some that are probably higher than that. And they're just straight up and down. It's a big effing wall. It's like a New Orleans levee.
Yes. All right. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Every Monday, we're live on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe, click the bell.
Ding.
Thank you. And you'll know when our episodes drop. And once season starts, we'll get more regular with a midweek live show as well. Gel and I can be found at Das Gel. It's at DASJEL for Gel. I can be found at Dawson JPEG. That's at DASJPEC. Send us in any questions you have. We'll hit you back or answer them on our next podcast. If you want your question answered, make sure you turn into the live feed and ask a question. We will answer it there for you. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot of that review. Get you some swag sent out in the mail for free. Gel, just finish off a summer shandy there.
And to finish off the last one from our last recording live on 7-Eleven. So it got a little warm and flat over these last couple days while we were not recording. JK, we are recording live on Monday.
Live on a Monday again.
But yeah, had to polish off this last one. I also want you guys to look at the nice cock on my cup.
Nice. Is that a rooster booster?
It is a rooster. I'll show you the booster. This is the logo of Four Corners Brewing here in Dallas. But I will be filling that glass up with a Miller Lite. I had 2 left in the fridge. The first one I tried to take out, did the old knocked it on the bottom of the shelf, fell down to the ground, and thankfully I had a second one to recover with. So
attaboy.
So it's going to be the old Miller Lite.
Nice. I still on the water train, recovering from the weekend, but I'll shout out another beer that I had over the weekend at Summerfest from Lakefront Brewery. It's a Bumble Bear, and it was a honey brown ale and was absolutely fantastic.
That is a great name for a honey brown
ale. Yeah.
That's a great name. And that's also, I'm trying to figure out the flavors there. I mean, it was baller.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I definitely go hunt that
certainly
out
sounds
in the store.
Unique.
Yeah, it was different having usually not a dark beer guy during the summertime, but for some reason, just the honey sounded refreshing, and it was pretty solid. I think it was in the 5 range for percent, so something you could sip on and not knock your pee-pee in the dirt, as Dad would say.
Classic Mick.
Yes.
But normally you see like a honey wheat type of that kind of a beer, not necessarily a honey brown,
or a honey lager usually.
I've seen. Right.
Yep.
So that's interesting. Next time I'm in the MKE, the 414 for you YouTube viewers, I'll have to definitely make sure to check that out.
Absolutely. All right, I have a big show for you. Going to hit the AFC South fantasy preview for you, get you primed and ready for the football season. Just a couple weeks now away from training camp, so that is exciting. And then, of course, we'll get into our Open Championship preview with our final major draft of the season, Gel. So it's coming down to that time, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Going to talk about the riveting AFC South preview here. Again, like the past episodes, we can tell you who we like, dislike, and then give you some top 3 draft targets that each of us are targeting. We'll kick it off with one of the relevant teams that we want to talk about here, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor, number 1 pick in the draft, more than likely. Obviously, I'm in on him this year. Michael Pittman Jr. from USC.
There you go. Nailed it.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in on him too. Had a fantastic year last year. Don't really see much of a drop off from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan. Maybe a little bit of an improvement there. Not in on Matt Ryan at all, but I think it shouldn't affect Michael Pittman Jr. too much. And then the only other one I wanted to talk about is, where are you sitting with Alec Pierce? Alec Pierce is kind of intriguing to me, taken a little bit later on in your draft as kind of that flyer spot. Matt Ryan, obviously in his prime, was able to support 2 wide receivers down in Atlanta, but definitely not the Matt Ryan of old. Do you think he still has enough in the tank for 2 wide receivers, or what are your thoughts there?
My only thing so we've seen Matt Ryan with Calvin Ridley, and Calvin's rookie year was awesome. So I don't think that there's going to be an issue in terms of In terms of him with another rookie, he's just, veteran quarterback, actually really likes to work with his young squad, unlike Mr. Rogers' neighborhood over there that apparently likes to ignore his rookies. So Matt Ryan's, this is one of the quarterbacks, I think, that one of the better situations for Alec Pierce to jump into. He's also a second round pick. So it's not like we're looking at a fourth, fifth rounder here. We're looking at a second round pick who put up some really sweet numbers at Cincinnati. Pretty prototypical size for a receiver, 6'3", 210. I mean, that's about what you want in a receiver. Ran a 4.4, so not lacking speed either. So I think, there's definitely a lot to like here with Alec Pierce. I guess I'm a little bit surprised he did end up going in the second round, but Colts are obviously a wide receiver needy team, given that Michael Pittman was really their only skill position player of note outside of Jonathan Taylor. So I guess I like the pick. It's a little high for me, but I don't know another quarterback that, obviously there's other quarterbacks that you'd rather have him with than Matt Ryan, just skill set wise, but just the fact that we've seen Matt Ryan do it with Calvin Ridley gives me a little bit of confidence that Pierce can also be a relevant player for Matt Ryan. How high do I take him? It's always kind of a crapshoot with rookie wide receivers, but where do I rank him? I certainly rank him for, at least in redraft this season, I've got him higher than Christian Watson. I probably have him a little bit higher than Jahan Dotson as well, just given the quarterback situation of Matt Ryan. I'm taking Matt Ryan over Carson Wentz this season, as did Indy. So,
right.
So I've got Pierce probably ranked as maybe my wide receiver 5 at this point, going into this season amongst rookies.
Nice. No, that's kind of, and right now he's pretty much going undrafted. That obviously a training camp can boost him up, but somebody you can definitely take in the later round of your draft that could end up being beneficial. You could plug in in your flex spot a few weeks here and there. So obviously Jack Doyle retired this offseason. Any interest in Mo Alley Cox? He's ginormous.
What we saw out of him last year is what we're going to see out of him this year, which is backup tight end at best, somebody that I don't necessarily want to roster, stream him on a bye week. That's where I see Mo Alley Cox. If there's not any other better options, but hopefully you have a better tight end for the other 17 weeks of the season.
Right.
If not, that's an issue.
Any interest in any of like Nyheim Hines, Paris Campbell, or another ones that have kind of popped up on teams in the past couple of years, but see any relevance for them at all? Nyheim Hines isn't somebody that, if Jonathan Taylor goes down, he's not getting the bulk of the carries, Nyheim Hines. So he's not really somebody that is handcuffed, I would say, for Jonathan Taylor, but any interest in him in PPR? He's been known to catch some passes out of the backfield here and there, but it's been the Jonathan Taylor show last year.
It's still just a sprinkling of opportunities that Hines gets. So speaking of Hines, by the way, the Steelers are renaming their stadium from Heinz Field to some other company I've never heard of. Yep. But also speaking of Heinz, hashtag not a sponsor, but no, I really don't have much. You
got money to throw around now that you're not.
It sounds like you got money to spend. I guess Heinz is in that category with some of these other third down receiving backs amongst Kenneth Gainwell, J.D. McKissick. Where do you have him amongst those two guys?
I think I'd rather have J.D. McKissick
and Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah, probably.
I think so too. So if you're looking for a PPR potential guy to sit on your bench until a bye week situation, that's going to be the only time that I would consider drafting Hines. I'd rather not draft him and see how production goes the first part of the season and then maybe pick him up. But like you said, he's not your handcuff type of running back, where if JT were to go down, it's not going to it's not going to be where Hines completely takes over that backfield. Just sticking in that running back room, is Jonathan Taylor the easiest number 1 overall pick we've had in years? Because I think it's about as obvious as it can get, for me at least, with Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, outside of 2 years ago, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was coming off just an absolute monster year.
But so was Saquon as well. So there was a, I mean, you would go CMC there, but Saquon was also.
But no, I mean, this is, well, and it's tough too, because if CMC plays a full season, he is going to top Jonathan Taylor just with how much rushing and passing work he gets. So, but it's just, is he going to stay healthy? I mean, we haven't seen him play a full season now in a couple of years. So that knocks him down my board a little bit. Derrick Henry, you're wondering if all the wear and tear is finally wearing him down. And Dalvin Cook is somebody that he's kind of slipped a little bit too, can't stay healthy. So Jonathan Taylor's, for me, easy number 1 and should be in all drafts.
What kind of a jump do you, or I should say, do you see Michael Pittman taking we saw him take a pretty significant jump last year from year 1. Do you see him taking another jump and where he could start leapfrogging somebody like a Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, I think so. I think right now I would probably put Michael Pittman in front of Terry McLaurin, at least for me, where I would want to draft. I think Pittman is somebody that could definitely wide receiver 2, but could get into that borderline wide receiver 1. He's just kind of been improving year after year so far. And like you said, with Matt Ryan coming in, this could be the best quarterback he's had throwing him the ball. I mean,
how sad is that? That's crazy.
Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz. And I would say Matt Ryan's probably in a better spot than those two guys. I mean, Phillip Rivers was okay, but he couldn't get the ball down the field at all and was at the tail end of his career. So yeah, I guess this is probably the best quarterback he's had since he's come into the league. So yeah, I expect him to improve on his numbers from last year and be a solid wide receiver 2 with potential wide receiver 1.
And I believe Pittman had Sam Darnold throwing in the ball at USC. So best quarterback he's ever had, I guess.
Gosh. Yeah. Peter. Shout out to Dodgeball. # not a sponsor, but could be. All right, Joe, what team do you want to jump to next? I'll kick it over to you.
I guess let's jump over to the Titans. And, I'm just going to kick it off right here. Is Derrick Henry the obvious number 2 pick? Or do you have a preference with McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, not Amari Cooper, Jesus, Cooper Kupp over Derrick Henry as somebody that should be the favorite as the number 2 pick over Derrick Henry?
Yeah, this is where it kind of gets dicey because Derrick Henry, I could see somebody taking him as the second person off the board, and I'd have no problem with it. I could also see him going in the 3rd spot, see him going in the 4th spot. If you're in a PPR league, he's not going to do you any good. He's not catching balls very often out of the backfield where Cooper Kupp might end up jumping him there. Obviously, like I said, with what Jonathan Taylor talked to, Christian McCaffrey, if he plays a full season, will finish as the running back 1 on the season. But Derrick Henry has been a safer play, more consistent outside of his big injury that he had last year. But it's tough. I guess, the one that kind of intrigues me a little bit is Austin Eckler. There's going to be a great offense there in Los Angeles for him on the Chargers. He catches a lot of balls out of the backfield, really doesn't come off the field at all either. So, but I don't know. Derrick Henry's just been absolute monster that can win you weeks when he's healthy. And he really hasn't had any other injury concerns outside of last year. But again, is this the time where he's going to start dropping off now?
And even when he came back last year, post-injury,
didn't look good.
Not the same guy. So probably needed a full off season, or hopefully the full off season helps him, but he is that bruising type of running back.
Yep.
That maybe this full off season is going to help him, but obviously wear and tear at some point. I mean, it happens with everybody. We've seen it with, Adrian Peterson. first year off that ACL looked he returned to the back that he was, but it wasn't that long after that, after he took all that bruising work. And he's the best running back of my life that I've at least, in terms of just pure running back that or at least since I started paying attention to football. Derrick Henry's that same type of back where it's just bruising and at some point it's going to catch up to you. So CMC as that number 2 pick, you're taking a risk, but the upside is obvious. Austin Eckler might be the safer number 2 overall pick over Henry.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Especially if you're talking PPR or even half points.
Yep. Where are you in the wide receiver room here? Treylon Burks obviously coming in, first round pick there. And then Robert Woods coming over from Los Angeles, coming off of the big injury. So he's probably not going to be playing, I wouldn't imagine, right off the bat, probably in that Michael Gallup situation there where it's going to be towards the beginning to middle of the season where you'll fully see him out on the field running around. But do you in on either of those guys? Out. I mean, I like Treylon Burks a lot. I'm in on Treylon Burks, but I'm out on Robert Woods, I think, this year.
I'm certainly not out on Robert Woods. I mean, it's going to be, like you said, you might not get him right away to start the season, but I think that his time in LA with the Rams, you knew as much as there was a little bit of doubt with him almost every season, he still kept putting up points. He still kept putting, being a very productive receiver. So I'm certainly not out on Robert Woods. Treylon Burks, though, is the guy that you can take with the upside. And I've said this on shows before. He was my number 2 wide receiver in this draft behind Garrett Wilson. I had him ahead of Drake London, ahead of Olave. I think that the Titans got a mad steal, and it made me understand why they made that AJ Brown trade. They're a pretty similar type of player, similar skill set, similar size, similar athleticism. AJ Brown came into the NFL as maybe not the most polished receiver ever, as Treylon Burks also maybe not the most polished receiver, but athleticism ultimately ends up taking over. The only downside for me with Treylon Burks is how high can he fly with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback? Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that gives me a little bit of a question mark with Burks, because I think Robert Woods is going to be more of your, between the 20s kind of guy. Although Burks is an awesome downfield threat as well. It comes down to what kind of an impact is Tannehill going to make in a negative way or potentially positive way. But I don't have that much faith in Tannehill after what we just saw out of him in that playoff game against the Bengals, when Joe Burrow was sacked 9 times and Tannehill still couldn't win that game against Cincinnati. That's insane, because he threw 3 picks. Tannehill admitted in the offseason he had to go to therapy because of that performance. It aided him that much. So you have to imagine his confidence is at an all-time low. Is he going to be a little bit slower with the release, a little bit less confident in making these passes, a little bit, less gunslingerish type, which we've seen some positive things out of Tannehill with his time in Cincinnati, but if his confidence is still at a true all-time low, that's obviously not what you can have in a quarterback. So I think that's the only thing that limits Treylon Burks' hype, or his, where he can eventually get. But I would take him over Robert Woods going into this season, as just knowing that there is the physical upside with Treylon.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm out on Robert Woods, is just with Ryan Tannehill. I like you said, I think you're going to see a downside in him this year. He's somebody that you could get fairly late in your draft the last couple of years and plug in as a quarterback for each week, and you were fine with him. I mean, he didn't lose you a ton of weeks, but I just see some lack of production from him this year. And then it concerns me with Robert Woods going to be missing training camp, missing some games. He's on a new team, hasn't played with Ryan Tannehill before, so he doesn't have that rapport. It's not like him tearing his ACL and then coming back and being with Stafford where he was there, or Jared Goff in years past, or he doesn't have that rapport with the quarterback, where Treylon Burks is getting that rapport during training camp and early on in the season. So I think him and Ryan Tannehill will kind of be on the same page there, and it might limit Robert Woods, his upside, at least, for not being there at the start of training camp.
Okay, so I'm looking at a list. This is coming from fantasypros.com. I'm just going to name 4 rookies, and I want you to tell me how you would rank them. Drake London, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. Those are the top 4 receivers that came off the board. How would you think, just snap of the finger, what's your gut reaction on those 4 guys? What order do you put them in?
I would say, man.
Snap of the finger, gut reaction.
I would say Olave, Burks, London, Wilson, just because Olave, I think, is going to end up stepping in, and we know that Jameis likes to sling the ball around. So I really like Chris Olave quite a bit this year. Burks, like I said, with Robert Woods out, I think he's going to be a heavy target from Ryan Tannehill early on in the season, get going right off of the bat. Drake London is the only wide receiver there. Yeah, you've got Kyle Pitts, but I think just for lack of other guys there, he's going to be getting quite a bit. And then I still am not sure on the MILF Hunter, Zach Wilson, what he's going to do this year. So I just,
MILF Hunter, I love it.
I saw that somewhere today and just died laughing.
What was it? What was the shirt courtesy of Barstool? Throwing bombs, banging moms.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson, attaboy.
For those of you who don't know what we reference, there was some beef from an ex-girlfriend of his that said he was sleeping with his best friend's or his mom's best friend. So, yeah, allegedly
slinging his shit around.
Yeah. So, what about you? Where would you rank those guys?
So I read it in the order that Fantasy Pros has them ranked: London, Burks, Wilson, Olave. I think I have probably the same order that you do, where I like Olave more than those other 3 guys. I probably go Burks 2, London 3, just because there's going to be the opportunity. Although I like Garrett Wilson a lot more as a prospect.
Yes,
as a prospect
100%.
than Drake London, no question about it. But London, is going to have the opportunity. Wilson's also got Elijah Moore to compete with, and they did bring in the tight end from Cincinnati, Uzoma, that we struggled with all last season to try to figure out how to frickin' spell or how to say his last name, but Uzoma. I think we got it.
They also brought over was it Conklin? I think Conklin too from Minnesota came over.
Oh yeah. I think you're right. So if Zach, can he sling it around the field the way he can sling it around in the bedroom? We'll see. Getting back to the Titans, just one last thing, and this is a dynasty related question. Malik Willis, draftable, 3rd round. He was a 3rd round pick, looked like, but there was potential and talks about him being, a 1st round pick. Obviously, if he was a 1st rounder, you would draft him in dynasty. There is a lot of fantasy potential given his athleticism. Ultimately, it's going to come down to, when is he going to play, or is he going to play? Because maybe a lot of times 3rd round picks don't end up being anything. We've seen that with a number of guys. Brian Brom, for example, Packer from he was drafted a long time ago. But point is, a lot of times 3rd round picks don't end up amounting to anything. Do you see Malik Willis being draftable? If so, where do you want to take him? If you had him in college, I would assume you're going to roster him, or do you take a risk and drop him because maybe you think he's never going to play?
I think he's worth having on a roster. I don't think he's going to necessarily play this year at all. Ryan Tannehill's locked into that spot outside of him just obviously getting hurt or just absolutely shitting the bed. But I don't see Malik Willis. Maybe have a couple design plays drawn up for him, show off some of his athleticism. But I think he's worth a roster. As far as if it was a startup dynasty draft and single quarterback, I think maybe a flyer at the end of the draft if he's on there. But otherwise, if you're in just a normal draft, a rookie draft, probably the late second, early third round, maybe more comfortable with him in the third round, I think. So I don't know. It's tough, but he's definitely worth being on a roster. So where do you see him gel? Like I said, I see it if you're in just a rookie draft, late second, more comfortable in the third round. Otherwise, startup dynasty flyer at the end of it.
I think I'm probably in that exact same spot. It's tough projecting any sort of rookies. I guess I don't have an issue with any of that.
Because I think they'll put him in for some sort of design plays and have something drawn up for him here and there, but not obviously anything fantasy relevant. But I don't know when he's going to see the field. I don't know Ryan Tannehill's contract situation off the top of my head. I know he signed an extension a couple years back, but he's not going to, Malik Willis isn't going to see the field this year for at least significant amount of time.
I mean, after this season, it's expensive. I mean, it's an $18 million cap hit if they were to just outright release Ryan Tannehill after this season.
He could be somebody too, though. If he bounces back and has a semi-decent year, you maybe trade him away if you think Malik Willis has something. So
similar to a Trey Lance, Jimmy G situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Tannehill's scary old. He's 34.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think of him as like, you know, being in the league for that long, but maybe it's because he was so irrelevant in Miami for the 6 years that he was there that you don't think of him as a 34-year-old. But I guess it's time for the Titans to figure out a contingency plan. So the drafting of Malik Willis for them makes sense, especially as a third rounder. Like no question.
All right, let's move down to the south, a little bit farther south than UGL and Houston, and
I've got armpit, not only Texas but the entire freaking country. Not a fan of Houston sorry to any Houston natives out there, but good God, I'm glad I don't live there.
I've got two guys that I like, and it's not super like. I would say that they're okay, but Brandon Cooks is always Mr. Consistent, and I don't see that changing at all. Davis Mills was fine last year. He was serviceable, and we'll see what happens this year. It's kind of, I think, his still tryout, because I expect Houston to be up in that top 5 of the draft next year, and there's some solid quarterbacks that are going to be coming out. So this is kind of his prove it year and see what they can go do from there. And then the other guy I like is Damien Pierce, if he can win that running back spot for fantasy. I think he's somebody, I'll just say it right now, it's just for lack of it and not having to jump back to him, but he's in my top 3 guys I would take. He's going right now in the 13th round, 5th pick. So that's absolutely phenomenal for somebody that could potentially be a starting running back to get that late in the draft. But again, keep an eye on training camp, because if he doesn't win that job, I am completely out on Houston's backfield outside of him. So,
well, you're not gonna go balls deep on Sleeper's favorite Marlon Mack.
What about Marlon Mack?
So the word, it makes me hate Marlon Mack. It makes me make sure that I don't draft him. For any of you guys, I know Josh has plugged Sleeper before, but if you do download that app, it's a great fantasy tool, but do not even worry about visiting the chat section, because it's just flooded with, how does this affect Marlon Mack?
literally every time something's posted.
Most annoying thing ever about any app that I have potentially. So I agree with you on Damien Pierce. He's the only back I would like to own if I own any of those backs. Burkhead, sorry, not making the cut for me. Do you see any sort of jump here out of Davis Mills? I mean, we're in year 2. You could definitely have made the argument that if he would have stuck around one more season at Stanford, he could have been he would have been, I think, or at least could have been the top quarterback picked in this draft over Kenny Pickett, given how the rest of the whole QB room ended up shaking out. Now that he's got 1 year in the league himself under his belt, do you see year 2 him making a jump? Because sometimes we see sophomore slumps. Other times we see year 2, there's a jump in production.
I just don't know if he's got the pieces around him to make that jump. He's got a lot of young talent around him. He's got, obviously, Brandon Cooks is not a young talent, but he's a good wide receiver and somebody that can be his safety blanket. But Nico Collins is there last year. He's got another year under him. John Mechie went there, wide receiver, Alabama. But Brevin Jordan, even at tight end, is he's talented, and he was there last year but didn't get a ton of playing time. So it's a lot of unproven guys that are there that I don't know that talent is going to get him to taking a huge step up. I see him having a similar season to last year, maybe a little bit of an uptick, but not somebody I'm looking to draft or roster on my fantasy team at all.
You mentioned Nico Collins. I think, yes, he is only going into year 2, but so are guys like De'Ami Brown, and so is who's that guy in Seattle?
Dwayne, isn't it? Yeah, it's what's his name? Eskridge.
Dwayne Eskridge. And those guys made no impact, and I don't see really any future for either of those two, at least based on what we saw this past season. We also didn't really see jack shit out of Nico Collins this last season. Am I being hyperbolic and saying I'm out on Nico Collins too? Because I'm out on those other 2 guys that were drafted ahead of Nico.
Yeah, no, I'm not rostering Nico at all or anything like that.
Yeah. No. Okay. So that's good. I mean, John Mechie, we're going to have to see. He's coming off that injury from Alabama. Yeah, so that's kind of a wild card too.
Redraft, no. I mean, he's somebody a flyer later in your draft if you want to for Dynasty. But yeah, no, redraft, stay away.
I don't have anything else on the Texans. I mean, it's very, very limited potential fantasy-wise for this squad. I do actually like what they did in the draft, but it's mostly defensive pieces and trying to bolster that offensive line. But obviously, getting Derek Stingley potentially could be the best corner in this draft. It's between him and Sauce Gardner. So I do like that, but not fantasy relevant. So I don't have anything more on the Texans fantasy-wise. Basically, avoid Houston outside of Brandon Cooks, as you probably did last year.
Speaking of avoiding, we're moving on to Jacksonville Jaguars here. And I think the only one that maybe for me is Travis Etienne. But again, he's coming off of a Liz Frank injury this last year. So that is very scary. But yeah, that's about it. James Robinson has that Achilles injury that he suffered late in the season. So Travis Etienne is going to be their starter. And obviously he's got the rapport with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence I'm out on, and I'm out on any of the Jags mediocre wide receivers that they signed to. So there's not a lot cooking in Jacksonville for me. Again, I like what they did, at least in the draft on defense. They definitely bolstered that up, but similar to the Chicago Bears, they didn't do a lot this offseason to get Trevor Lawrence talent around him. And I think you're going to see that limiting him again this season.
I have to just, clearly a lot higher on Trevor Lawrence than you are. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is QB1, not even close, but I think absolutely rosterable. number one pick, last year had been the number one recruit, he was the number one quarterback prospect coming into the draft since Andrew Luck. He's now out of that Urban Meyer disaster, and Doug Peterson comes in. Doug Peterson, when Peterson was there in Philly, he made Wentz an MVP candidate pre-injury, and they finished that season with Nick Foles winning a Super Bowl. And Nick Foles threw for over 500 yards in that Super Bowl. I think Doug Peterson, I don't know if he's got a magic wand, but I think he's a good quarterback coach. He had been a backup quarterback, but still a quarterback in the league for a while. Was a Packer, by the way, just for those of you that didn't know, for Mr. Favre. So I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence, I want him as my QB1, but he's certainly QB2 / Superflex starter for me.
I mean, he's going to be on somebody's roster as their second quarterback. I'm not taking him and not in at all on quarterback one, like you said, but he's somebody, if he's sitting there later in the draft, I could see throwing on because it does have some upside, but I don't know how much upside there is unless he starts running quite a bit, which we didn't see a ton out of him last year from him running the ball at all.
We did see that though at Clemson.
Yes,
he was a very good runner.
Yeah, which was surprising that they didn't utilize that last year. But I don't know. Christian Kirk, I mean, that's their wide receiver one going into the season. I don't think he's got the talent there to put up numbers that are going to launch him into being able to start for fantasy outside of a bye week. Speaking of Christian Kirk and just that wide receiver room in general, I mean, are you buying into that bloated contract that Kirk has at all? No, not at all. You'd see flashes at time from him in Arizona, and granted, he was never the wide receiver one in Arizona, but I don't. That was a contract that I think we all were just shocked at the amount of money that they threw his way. And no, he
really set the market. He set the market, and then Mike Williams reset the market with his 4-year, $80 million. And then you saw the trickle down effect to all the top receivers.
Yeah, I think all
going out and getting their cash once they saw
wide
those
receivers. Yeah, all the wide receivers that got cash this year are all sending fruit baskets over to Christian.
Yeah, get those edible arrangements on the way.
Hashtag not a sponsor.
One last thing on that wide receiver room, Laviska Shenault, are you out?
Yeah.
Please tell me yes.
Yes. No, okay. He was intriguing his rookie year just because he was kind of that like Deebo Samuel role where he can go out and catch, and then they'd run other plays with him as featured in the run game, I guess, too, with different plays. But no, I'm out on Laviska Shenault.
Good. So I guess wrap up for me. 2 questions. Is this the worst division for fantasy in the league? I mean, we did establish on last week's episode that I think it's pretty much like, at least we agree, the Patriots are the worst team. But outside of JT, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, the rest of this division is a total crapshoot. And my follow-up question to that is, should we just relegate this entire division to London? Let them all follow Jacksonville and let them all be on the other side of the pond, because this is pathetic.
The Colts, I think, are going to be fine. I think they'll crack the playoffs this year, so we can send everybody else over there.
Somebody has to crack the playoffs.
Yeah. But I think they'll dethrone Tennessee.
They'll dethrone what?
Dethrone.
Oh,
geez, daydream about Mo Alley Cox or what? But No, this is by far, I think, the worst division for fantasy. There's not a ton here outside. Like you said, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, those guys are going at the beginning of your draft. So I didn't put them down as draft targets because you're not really targeting them. You just, I lucked out and got one of the top picks in my draft just so I can draft them. But guys, I do like right now, Michael Pittman Jr. is going at the 408 spot, which I think is awesome to get him in the 4th round to have that potential high wide receiver 2, low wide receiver 1 potential there. And then I'd already mentioned Damien Pierce. If he wins that battle, his ADP is going to go up though. So hopefully your drafts earlier on, you can take him as a flyer later on. And then again, Brandon Cooks just kind of by default, but he's going in the back of the 5th round, 6th round, where he's somebody at that point in time, you're drafting him as a wide receiver 3, maybe your wide receiver 2, but he's got a pretty solid floor where he's going to have 6 catches, 80 yards. Maybe he'll have a touchdown every couple of weeks. So it's pretty safe for a flex spot, I think, for Brandon Cooks there.
Some safe production out of him. Yep. My top 3 guys, and I'm not going to hit any of the names that you just did, but as I said, I'm a lot higher on Trevor Lawrence than I know you are. I do really see a year 2 jump, which is still questionable with Davis Mills, given his coaching staff is led by Lovie Smith, not exactly known as a QB whisperer. Sorry, sexy Rexy.
Hey, Kyle Orton was relevant for a little bit.
Orton. So I do see a nice jump out of him, where last year he was effectively unrosterable, but I see some potential out of Trevor Lawrence jumping up into maybe top 15 is probably a little bit of a stretch, but maybe hovering 15, 18-ish, where last year he was deep into the 20s. Number 2 guy that I think you can target and a guy that we did not touch on is Marvin Jones, because I am not a Christian Kirk believer. I'm out on Laviska Shenault. Marvin Jones is, I think, the best receiver within the Jags receiver room. And we've seen him have some productive years. His last year with Detroit, pretty damn solid, honestly. I mean, I had him that year and I started him in a playoff game. I don't think I won that playoff week, but he was a starter for a playoff team that year. Number 3, and this is going to be maybe somebody that you don't need to, I'm going to suggest you do not draft, but if you are a Derrick Henry owner, keep an eye on Hassan Haskins as a handcuff to Derrick Henry.
Former Michigan man,
former Wolverine, 4th round pick. Again, I mean, he was quite productive at Michigan, had some breakout games last year. Overall, decent running back. Again, 4th round pick, handcuff option, as also a handoff option.
Nice.
Heyo. But I'm not saying I'm necessarily going to draft him, but if you are a Derrick Henry owner, hit that watch list button and keep an eye on him. And if you see that he's starting to get work as the Titans' number 2 back, might be worth grabbing him off waivers at some point throughout the year, and just for as an insurance policy for Derrick Henry.
No, I like that. Definitely somebody, just a flyer to hang on to, like you said, especially you have Derrick Henry. So, all right, Jill, anything else of the atrocious AFC South before we move into
atrocious is the name of the game.
Yes. All right, let's get into the main event here. The reason why we're releasing on Thursday here, the Open Championship, the 150th edition of the Open Championship at the home of golf in St. Andrews, the old course. So one of the iconic and most prestigious courses in the entire world. And like you touched on, Jill, you got those pot bunkers all over the place. Fun fact, the course originally was laid out in reverse. So the greens are the tee boxes greens. So you could see the sand traps from the tee box, the old format. But now, so when they switched it over a long time ago, that's why you can't see all of the traps and they're hidden because of the change in the layout. So
yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, right. I can just imagine standing up on a tee box and hitting like just a beautiful tee shot, and then all of a sudden you see the ball like bounce once and then disappear, and you're just
it's just gone. Yeah, and you know your fate.
Yep. Your caddy's just sitting there laughing at you. Like, you're fucked, buddy.
Best of luck, bud.
Yes. Before we get into the tournament, Collin Morikawa won last year. He's the defending champ. Obviously, this is one that's like a PGA championship, like the U.S. Open. It rotates around different courses. So it hasn't been at St. Andrews. I believe the last year was like 2014, 2015, if I'm not mistaken. But so it hasn't been there in a few years, but wanted to jump into some PGA news here. PGA is under investigation by the Department of Justice due to them not giving live golfers, live golfers aren't getting world ranking points for their wins. So they're kind of under investigation there for what's the terminology there?
And it's an anti-competition. I don't know. I don't have the exact verbiage in front of me, but it's effectively an anti-competition investigation which the PGA said that they expected something like this to go down. The Department of Justice actually the PGA went through a similar investigation back in 1994. Mm-hmm. Also, when Greg Norman tried to start up a separate league and ended up creating the World Golf Championships, the WGC, and the PGA basically just like swallowed the WGC up, and you see there's WGC events annually, all over the place. So, the PGA said that this was not unexpected because, they're aware of the potential legal threat, and if they were thinking that there would be no chance of this, they would be, as oblivious as possible. So they're going to have probably a very similar defense as they did back in the 90s. However, the difference is the money is way different now than it was in the 90s. And this isn't just some bullshit startup league. The Live Golf is not, it didn't work before. The previous Greg Norman attempt did not work before. This is a whole new ball game. So Jay Monahan better be ready. Him and his team, they better be ready to fight, because we're seeing, we discussed this in one of last week's episode, but money in sports is changing every sport out there. And the NCAA is dealing with it now. PGA, who knows what sports next? TV contracts are changing everything. YouTube is changing everything, which is who is the one YouTube is the one that broadcasts these live events. So there's a lot more at play here that the PGA is going to have to fight versus what they did back in the 90s. But yeah, I'd imagine that this is going to be a lot longer of a legal battle than the last one. The one back in the 90s, that investigation started in 94 and it was pretty much wrapped up in 1995. I can't imagine this one wraps up within a year if they're doing a true investigation and dealing with lawsuits. So Monahan, get your best guys on the team if you expect to be able to hold these golfers to the same rules that you have been over the last few decades.
Yep. You touched on Greg Norman. The Open Championship did not invite him to the Champions Dinner at all. They didn't really want him at the tournament at all. Just said that because it's the 150th edition of the Open Championship, they didn't want the distraction. So they just figured that they wouldn't invite him, and said that they'd look at inviting him again down the road. But pretty strong take there from the Open Championship. And I don't necessarily blame them, because, obviously it's going to be all live. And we haven't really had any Tiger news conferences either with the live. And we'll probably get one of those here coming up too and see what some of his words, because that everybody's going to be asking and trying to get his take on that as well. But you don't want the Open Championship to have that cloud over it and have it just be all about the live and that. So they want to be celebrating the 150th edition of it at one of the most iconic courses in the world.
Yeah, I think just with how prestigious this event on a year-to-year basis, the Open Championship is obviously one of the four most prestigious events in golf. But given that it's the 150th and they're playing it at at the old course, it doesn't shock me that they're saying, look, Greg, we know he's won it before. He's not invited to the champions dinner because they just don't want it. And hopefully Greg Norman is being a good guy about it and not making too much of a stink, because this tournament in particular just doesn't deserve that kind of distraction.
Yep. All right, back to the golf. Pretty much every big name is playing in this one, so quite the field from the European Tour, American Tour, PGA Tour. Live golfers are at this one too, so get to see everybody out there trying to win the last major of the season. Any golfers you are pretty high on, you're fading, Gel, and any betting tips for those out there wanting to win some cash since you are on a hot streak?
A hot streak, one for my last one. Hell yeah.
Hey.
I'm just going to hit the top guys really quick for odds to win it. Opens up with Rory at 10-1. Xander Schauffele, who's been obviously, as discussed on the last episode, on a tear, 14-1. John Rahm 16-1. Spieth as well at 16-1. Matt Fitzpatrick, after getting his victory at, what was that, 3
Country
weeks ago
Club
now?
US Open. Yep.
US Open now.
It was third weekend in June.
Yep, there you go at 18-1, and then Scotty Scheffler, one of the hotter players, at 18-1. Last year's winner, Colin Morikawa, 25-1, and Sam Burns, one of the names that we've kind of focused on quite a bit this year, number 2 in the FedEx Cup standings, is at 40-1. So some pretty good odds, I think, on Sam Burns here. As far as some of these live golfers go, starts out with Dustin Johnson. He's got the best odds at 33-1, followed by Brooks Koepka at 45-1. Bryson DeChambeau, 90-1. He's not had it's been a while since he's been extremely relevant in terms of being at the top of the leaderboard. So that's why you're seeing those odds as long as they are at 90-1. But so you're seeing mostly PGA players at the top, but you do still have DJ sneaking in there at 33-1 to have a chance to win this. 3 other names that I want to run off here. Tiger, 80-1. So shorter odds than DeChambeau to win it. Phil Mickelson, 250-1. And one last name here, John Daly.
Attaboy.
Plus 200,000. 2,000-1. So hey, if you want to try to cash on John Daly, be my guest.
Yeah.
But
I think they should have betting odds if he's actually going to finish the tournament or not.
Right. Those are probably shorter odds. One of my long shots that I actually do like to at least have a chance to compete here is Max Homa. He's at 80-1 odds. Tied last week at T16 at the Scottish Open. He played 36. Fun fact, he played 36 holes before his round on Saturday, and he shot a 66 Saturday. So if he gets in his prep work and he can keep that rolling, he finished T16, so not great, but not terrible, thanks to that Saturday finishing 4 under. But he is a top 10. He is top 10 in the FedEx Cup ranking, so I do like him here. Tied for 5th at the Memorial. He won the Wells Fargo a ways back. 80-1 odds. I do like that as a potential player to win this. One guy that I definitely am looking to fade, though, Justin Thomas. He's right now at plus 2,000, 20-1 odds. He withdrew a couple weeks back at the Travelers, and with a back injury. This past week, he missed the cut and finished 10 over. So that's somebody that he does have really short odds at 20-1. I'm not even touching Justin Thomas to win. The other thing too, last 5 at the British, tied for 50 or finished at 53rd, missed the cut twice, finished at 11th, and last year finished 40th. So hasn't really sniffed that top 5 at all.
No, yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, not great last week. Probably got over to St. Andrews a little bit earlier to get some practice rounds in with
Clearly
not being able to play the weekend. But
I don't know if that back injury had to affect him last week. And he's also said he generally doesn't play that well at links courses. So you see the name, it looks intriguing, but he says he doesn't really play that well at links courses. And plus he's got a back injury. That's a recipe for trouble. So you like the name, don't like him this week.
All right, Joe, you ready for our draft?
Let's go, baby.
All right. So how this works, every major tournament so far, Joe and I have each picked 5 golfers, snake draft style. And once you use a golfer in a tournament, you cannot use them again. So I'm not running off all 15 picks of each of us. So you guys can trust us, Joe. We'll call out each other if somebody picks somebody that they already did. I have them written down in front of me. But so once you pick a golfer, you can't use them again. And they go head to head. So Joe's first pick is going head to head versus my first pick. Whoever wins gets a point. If it's a tie, you get half a point. If you miss the cut, you get no points. So we're going through 5 matchups total, and loser does a beer chug. So I think what are we? 1-1 each.
1-1 sounds right.
You won the Masters. Yeah. We tied for the U.S. Open, and then I absolutely dominated the PGA Championship. So we'll I believe a 4-0.
Well, given that I drafted Thigala. And he didn't even play.
Hey, he's playing in this one.
He is.
Maybe I'll pick him. We'll see.
You should. I would have loved to take him here, but can't. Yes. As a previously drafted player.
Nope. All right, Joe, it is that time. I had the first pick in the Masters and the PGA Championship. So you have first pick for the Open Championship. So who is your first golfer off the board?
I'm going to go with the Englishman. Won the last major championship, and that's going to be Matt Fitzpatrick, number 1 overall.
Nice. That was somebody I was hoping to grab, so that was a great pick by you. Like that. All right, I am going to. I'm going to go with Patrick Cantley. I like Patrick quite a bit this week as well. Played pretty solid last week at the Scottish Open. So I'm going to match him up against Matthew Fitzpatrick. And that puts me back on the clock.
Snaky snake.
Yes,
Slurring snake.
I'm going to go with somebody else that is used to playing in these conditions and somebody that has kind of had an up and down season, did halfway decent last week, made the cut. I think he finished at even last week at Scottish Open. And I'm going to go with Tyrrell Hatton.
Damn it. That was one of my guys I was definitely focusing on. So I now have to pivot off of Tyrrell Hatton then.
Yeah, you do.
Love it. As the best. Okay. Well, let me pivot over to who was my number 2 guy behind Matt Fitzpatrick. And I'm going to go big time Tommy Fleetwood here.
Okay.
Go with another Englishman here. Staying on that side of the pond. Tommy Fleetwood. Love his hair. Love how it may be
the mane.
Love the mane and that blowing in the wind. Just the potential for that as a TV viewer is extremely could potentially be satisfying. So Tommy Fleetwood.
I like it.
My 3rd round pick here. I'm gonna stay over on that side of the pond. I'm gonna get a little Justin Rose action going on.
Okay.
Little J Rose, sticking with the old Englishman.
All right. I'm gonna go with somebody that you touched on that's got a little bit higher odds, but has been playing fairly well. Played well last week, and that's Sam Burns. I think Sam Burns should be a pretty solid play this week. I like his match up against Justin Rose in this one, and that means I'm back on the clock here. Man,
It's nut crunching time.
Well, I know my last pick. I'm going with somebody you already picked, so that's not. I'm trying to decide who I want.
Here. Plenty guys out there. I've got my next 2 picks lined out, so I'm ready to rumble here. Unless you pick one of them, and I'm gonna be all sorts of pissy. But
oh man, I'm gonna double down on my last week's guy and hope that Will Zalatoris has a better turnaround here. So he's been playing pretty solid. He's got the extra rest from not playing last weekend. So I'm going to take a chance with him this week at St. Andrews again. So I'll double down on Big Willie.
I like it. Zal is I mean, that guy's due for insane that he's never won a tournament. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Insane.
I'm going to stick with that side of the pond again. I'm going to go with the Sweden that won this in 2016. Good old Henrik Stenson.
Nice.
Yeah, Big Daddy. And I'll finish it off with somewhat reluctantly, but
yeah,
you know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
Ramalama Ding Dong. My pick last week as well, who shit himself. So we'll see if he can get it together. I mean, he's got to break out at some point, and staying on that side of the pond, given that he's from Spain. So I went 100% Euros with
see
my
that. Not a bad strategy.
3 Englishmen, a Sweden, a Swedish.
And a Spaniard.
Swedishman and a Spaniard. So let's go.
All right. My last one matching up against John Rahm is going to be somebody that is from that side of the pond as well.
Lowry.
Shane Lowry.
Damn it.
So I know he would have definitely been somebody that you would have picked had you not picked him for the Masters, but I could put him at number 5 since you couldn't take him. So he is somebody he probably would have been my second pick off of the board behind Matthew Fitzpatrick if I knew you hadn't already taken him and I could save him for the end.
What I'm most pissed about is I went into our pick'em saying for the British Open, I'm going to go all Euros. Yet in previous tournaments, I took Rory, Lowry, and Hovland.
Hovland I wouldn't have cared for, but Rory is one that I wish I would have had this week.
I could have ran out there. I mean, in theory, Rahm, Fitzpatrick, Rory, Lowry, Hovland. That's sweet. Although I'll take Tommy Fleetwood. I'm good with that. He's been playing pretty well, but still, I wanted to go all Euros, and I did. Just had to make a few consolations with Rose and Stenson.
Yes. So I'll just recap this. We've got Jell's got Matthew Fitzpatrick. I've got Patrick Cantley facing him. Jell's got Tommy Fleetwood. I have Terrell Hatton. Jell's got Justin Rose. I've got Sam Burns. Jell's got Henrik Stenson versus Will Zalatoris, and John Rahm versus Shane Lowry. So we'll see how this plays out. One of us will be doing a beer chug live on a Monday next week. At least
one of us.
Yeah, at least one of us. If it's a tie, then we both do it. So
then we get social.
Make sure you tune in on Monday, our live feed, subscribe, and click the bell on YouTube, and you can see us chug a beer. Otherwise, we can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. If you want to follow Jell, he can be found at Dawson Jell. I can be found at Dawson JPEG. Send us in any questions. We'll hit you back with an answer. Else, if we like the question a lot and want more discussion on it, we will bring it up on our next podcast. Again, on YouTube Live, you can ask us any questions. We have the chat wide open for you to ask away. And no question's a dumb question. We like any and all questions. Send us in questions. Maybe we'll
I don't know if my high school teachers agree with that philosophy. No question is a dumb question. But
hey, but that's how we roll here.
This is how we roll. Florida Georgia Line, hashtag not a sponsor. But no copyright infringement.
Yes. But no, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot, get you some sticker swag sent out in the mail. Joe, where can they find us at?
First off, Henrik Stenson's middle name is Olaf. Let's go. I feel so much better about that pick now.
He turned into a snowman.
Hit us up on our presenting sponsor, Anchor, available on the web and also via the Apple App Store or your Google Play Store, whatever your phone's platform is, whether you're an Android or Apple user. They allow us to do all of our presenting, editing, and publishing to you guys for free. We're able to publish this again for free on Apple Podcasts.
Free.
For free. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Pods. Make sure to hit up our YouTube channel. Just search Dead Arm Sports in that search bar. Our channel should be the first thing that pops up. Hit subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell to get our alerts. Ding. And you'll be able to see everything. Make sure, again, subscribe, rate, review, whatever your chosen listening platform is. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just searching Dead Arm Sports. Hit us up in the DMs. Any questions, comments, concerns. Also, additionally, need to make sure spread the word via mouth. That's the easiest way to spread our show is via word of mouth. Tell your friends, coworkers, parents, children, pets, plants, and friends, enemies, people running down the street. If there's any sort of holiday coming up, in Milwaukee, if you're visiting the Summerfest grounds, we're going to have there's a ton of festivals still to go. So make sure you're just screaming Dead Arm Sports at the festivals. And I'm sure that security will security will love it.
Yes. Everybody's got a mouth, Joe.
Oh,
all right. Appreciate everybody out there listening to the podcast. And again, like Joe said, help spread the word, gets us our name out there. We can get you more content and help grow our podcast. We would greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll be back on Monday to recap the Open Championship and jump into the NFC South. So we'll talk some more Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Can't wait.
Can't wait.
All right, Joe, close us out.
This is a direct quote from the Open Championships or the Open Champions dinner.
Nailed it.
Yeah, swish. This is going straight to Greg Norman. No soup for you.